What would you say if I told you that when it's been studied in detail, elite athletes from Africa had a very similar diet to elite athletes from Asia, with only minor differences? And they, in turn, ate in similar ways to elite athletes from North America, who did the same things as Europeans. And they had similar eating habits to South Americans. And if you think that this happens by chance, then think again. This is a process of trial and error over the very long term at the cutting edge of performance. What works in a diet sense carries on, and what doesn't gets phased out until you have the boiled down essence of the ultimate diet for endurance athletes the world over. 5 core diet habits that will work for every endurance athlete from elite to beginner, and you don't need to take it from this random running YouTuber. You can read the awesome book The Endurance Diet by endurance athlete aficionado and sports nutritionist Matt Fitzgerald. But guess who I got to help me tell this story in this video? Yep, Matt Fitzgerald. So if you want to learn the hows, whys and whats of implementing the most effective diet for elite and non-elite endurance athletes, then let's get started. Let's get started. Okay, here's how I'm going to play this. Obviously, I cannot tell you the entirety of this book in a 12-13 minute video. So what I'm going to do is suggest you go and read the book, obviously, and also while you're at it, read How Bad Do You Want It, which is not only my favorite Matt Fitzgerald book, but maybe one of my favorites of any author. But what I decided to do after reading this book is that I thought if I had a chance to speak to Matt Fitzgerald, which I do, I ask him one question relevant to each of the 5 core habits, something that the majority of the people would benefit from hearing, something that we would all want to know, me included. So that's how I'm going to play it. I'm going to try to the best of my abilities to summarize each of the 5 core habits with one key question. Wish me luck. But before we do that, I think it's important to get an idea of the angle that Matt is coming from in this book.
My whole orientation with this book is looking at the eating habits of the most successful endurance athletes, versus the traditional approach with, quote unquote diet books, which is to look at science. And of course, as you know, having read the book, there's plenty of science in the book, but this is really just like more of like an observational monkey see, monkey do, I'll have what he or she is having approach. And that is simply what the top athletes do.
Okay, let's get this thing started. Ignore what I look like, it's 6 a.m. So I've decided in my infinite wisdom, or maybe foolishly, that to talk about core habit number 1, I'm going to take you through my day of eating. And core habit number 1 is eat everything. And what struck me about eat everything is that it really does mean eat everything. It means eat high quality foods, but it also means eat low quality foods in proper amounts.
And that is simply what the top athletes do. They eat everything. And when I say everything, I mean all of the high quality food types, but also dessert and also a glass of wine, and the things that aren't necessarily considered to be major contributors to physical health.
And this is my cheat day, eat what you want day, because the evidence is clear. Restrained eating, as in cutting things out of your diet, doesn't work if they're things that you enjoy. This isn't a journey about punishment, it's more properly structuring and knowing when you can eat these low quality foods. Restrained eating leads to binge eating in weak moments. So let's not learn how to cut things out, let's learn how to moderate them properly. So if you want to factor in the occasional low quality food into your diet, here's what I suggest you do. Have a structure it. So as I said at the start of this part, it is a cheat day, which means I know I can cheat, I know I can eat these kinds of things. And the reason I say add structure is just because it makes you more likely to follow it. If you have this kind of aspirational, I'm not going to eat rubbish this week, it doesn't work. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect, I'm not saying that I manage it all week long, every week, but it does mean that when I know that I can cheat on a Friday, that I pretty much stick to a Friday, and then I just, I eat some of the foods that I love that maybe aren't so good for me, like the odd chip. So whether it's those extra few beers that you want on a particular night, or glasses of wine, or maybe those pieces of chocolate that you crave all week, structure it, know it's coming, have it, rather than aspirationally hope that you might not eat it at other times, and I guarantee you're going to be better at holding off and then eating it at set times, but still eating it.
We humans created these lower quality foods for a reason, because like they're enjoyable to eat, and that's okay. Like that in itself is a good reason to eat those foods.
And now that we are satisfied that we are eating everything, which makes me very happy, it's time to move on to core habit number 2, which is eat quality. But here's the thing, eating quality didn't mean what I thought it meant. I thought it meant more expensive, organic style foods, foods from better supermarkets. It's not that at all. I'll let Matt explain.
For nutrition scientists, diet quality has a very specific meaning, which is associated not with how much the food costs or what necessarily is chemical makeup of the food, but what effect eating the food has on your health and fitness.
So now we're dialing in. We're talking about quality from a nutrition standpoint, as in what can it do for your performance, what can it do for your life, rather than organically, expensively created spinach over store-bought spinach. The body sees it as spinach. Spinach is spinach.
There's been a lot of epidemiological research, like looking at the effects of eating more of this type of food or less of that type of food on health outcomes and fitness outcomes. And what those studies have found is that every type of food is associated with positive health and fitness outcomes. Processed foods of any type tend to have negative consequences for our health, whereas unprocessed natural foods of all types tend to have. That's why I put eat everything first, because it really is eat everything. But then, the big caveat is, well, and this is what you see elite athletes doing, is like, if you look closely at their plate, any grains on their plate are whole grain. And, any meat on their plate is a minimally processed meat, that type of thing.
And you're going to need to read the book if you want to know about this in more detail, but Matt's come up with a brilliant system of scoring, diet quality score, that you can look at the foods that you eat each day and the quantities in which you eat them and score your day. Low quality foods have minus points, high quality foods have plus points. It sounds difficult to do, but I promise you it isn't, and it just starts you on the journey. It could be a period of just 1 week or 2 weeks. So if you want to change the quality of your overall diet, then that's how you're going to start. I am just about to go for a run in the Thai rain, and I'm actually pretty excited because I'm going to talk to you about the third habit and something that is very close to my heart, which is eat carb centered. So I thought that is the first question I'm going to ask Matt. How does he feel about carbs?
Yeah, so if you look at, the world's most successful endurance athletes, they tend to eat, I am careful to say, carbohydrate centered diet versus high carbohydrate diet, which just basically means that high quality carb rich foods are at the center of most of the meals and snacks that the most successful endurance athletes eat.
I think the standout thing for me is that it comes down to this huge misconception as to what carbs are. People just think carbs bad and lump them all in together, and that's not the case, because there are so many different carbohydrate sources that can do so many different things to you when you eat them. So it is not and never will be a case of all carbs are bad. What are the carbs that you're eating? Because if you look at the first 2 habits of eat everything and eat quality, then you'll quite quickly realize there's a place in your diet for all of this, whether that be French fries. Isn't that right, Elliot?
I took French fries once in a while.
And the evidence shows that almost all pro athletes, and most of us should, eat quality, high quality carbohydrates. Because when you start taking into account glycemic load and glycemic index, you'll realize that high quality carbs do a very different thing to your body than just simple carbohydrates or low quality carbohydrates. Ultimately, I'm going to approach the carbohydrate debate in the same way that I approach anything like that, and that is, what does the evidence say in terms of my performance, which is ultimately why we do these things, right? Training and racing.
The research on this is really abundant and one-sided. Like, if you're an endurance athlete and you're challenging your body with high workloads of training, probably feel and perform best if you err on the side of a carbohydrate centered diet. So get the quality first. But those carbs are the stuff that when you look under a microscope at insulin levels, like that's beside the point. Outcomes matter, not mechanisms, and the outcomes are you feel better and perform better if you're getting enough carbohydrate.
And thus, my conclusion on eating carb centered is this. There's an extract in the book where Matt goes to Kenya and trains with the Kenyans, and he suggests to the ex-elites, the elite Kenyans, that they cut carbohydrates out of their diet, or people do. And they just laughed in his face. But for me, if it's good enough for the best in the world, it's good enough for me, and that'll do.
I'm taking you through my Saturday today of exercise and eating so that I can try and nail core habit number 4, which is eat enough. This is something I've very much struggled with throughout the years. As a proud member of the Clean Plate Club, I have to eat everything that's on my plate, but I also know that there are people on the other side of the kind of divide, I guess, that don't eat enough for the endurance diet. So I wanted to know from Matt, how do you know what is enough?
In the book, I point out, like, when's the last time you saw an overweight deer? Do eagles need to count calories in order to eat enough and not too much? And so we come to think that we can't rely on these internal signals of hunger and satiety to know when to eat and when not to. That's baloney. We couldn't have survived this long unless we knew. We just sort of forget.
I guess what really stood out for me in this chapter and about this habit is the fact that actually we have 2 types of hunger that we need to satisfy, and one is physical hunger, as in, am I hungry, I should eat, am I full, I should stop, and one is hedonic hunger, as in, I don't need this, but I want to eat it, or I want to eat more of it. And I needed to know how you listen to the body's cues to unpick that and just look at physical hunger, because I am absolutely guilty of eating for hedonic hunger. I would say now I'm comfortably full, and it's time for me to try and learn how to decide when to eat next by tuning into the keys for physical hunger, not hedonic hunger. I need Matt's help again.
It's just a matter of like retraining, it's called mindful eating or intuitive eating. The way to do it is to just like take a weekend, whether you're on the over restrictive side or on the Clean Plate Club, and wake up in the morning, and whether you normally eat breakfast first thing like me, or you normally wait, a lot of that is routine. Like we just eat when we eat. And so forget about your routine and just wake up and tune into your body. And if you feel like sort of a rumbling or emptiness in your stomach, or like a craving for food that is independent from a craving for like something just because it happens to be in front of you or because it's a matter of routine, then eat. But stop eating when you feel comfortably satisfied versus when you've like finished a portion or when you're stuffed.
So I am listening to my physical hunger cues because it's now 10 to 3 and it's the first time I felt hungry in the day, so I'm going to eat now. I thought I would feel hungry earlier, but this is how it's working, so I am retraining listening to my body. So I'm going simple with brown rice, tomato and egg. Job done. Hey, nobody said anything about it having to look pretty every time, right? I'm satisfying my physical hunger, and that's good enough for me. And finally, the 5th core habit, the final piece of the jigsaw, as I like to think about it, is eat individually. This is your chance to take what you've set up with the other 4 core habits and play.
I think it's helpful just to conceptually to think of it as a journey versus like a transition from eating wrong to eating right. And the first 4 habits we discussed really establish sort of parameters that we all need to function within. You're going to do fine as long as you're within those parameters, obeying those first 4 habits. But in order to find your optimal place within that space, it's on you, really. It is a process versus just like flipping a switch kind of thing. You have a right to pursue your preferences in your diet.
Some simple things I've already done with my diet is switching white rice to brown rice, is switching potato all of the time to sometimes sweet potato. I've played around with fasted training in the mornings, and I like to try different things before big training sessions or races, eat different meals, and I've settled on the things that I think work for me.
So why don't we take your current diet as a starting point and make the fewest necessary changes to get where you want to go, instead of just saying, I don't really care how you eat now or why. It's like, I don't care if you like peanut butter. Peanut butter is not part of this diet. Like, I don't care if you're Italian. Italian food is not a part of this diet. Like, none of that is necessary. So just like, take your current habits, which are there for a reason as a foundation, and then just, evolve them.
As Matt said, this is a journey for life. This is not for the next few weeks or months. It will be a constantly evolving journey for life. Sometimes you'll accidentally find something that works for you, and sometimes you'll very consciously make some changes and see if they work for you, and sometimes they won't. And that's all right. It's a journey, just like running itself.
And there's no such thing as perfection, but it can be just this constant process of refining and tweaking.
First off, huge thanks to Matt for being a part of this video. I could not have done it without you, so I really appreciate it. And what I'm going to do is put the full 30-minute chat that we had on my Facebook page if you're interested to see the thing in its full glory. And if the video brought you any value or brought a smile to your face, then consider subscribing. And I'm going to suggest this video here that I think that you might like if you liked this one, which is the best body shape for a runner. And I don't think it's what you think it is. Now all you've got to do is go start playing with your diet, see what works, and I'll see you Sunday.